What's going on, everybody? In this video, we're going to look at how to write the equation of an ellipse if we're given the foci and the major axis. So me personally, I do this in just 4 steps. You may have an easier way to do it or a better way to do it, and that's awesome. If it works for you, it works for you. If you're still a little confused on this, my steps are fairly simple. First thing I want to do is I just want to sketch a graph of what I'm given. Even though I'm not given a whole lot, I need something visually that helps me understand what I'm looking at. Once I've sketched, I'm going to find the center. And the center is going to be given to me as part of the foci, and the other part is going to have to be found by simply counting to find the middle point between the 2 foci points. Once I've found that, I'm going to find a squared, and then simply once I've found a squared, I can find the value of b squared. And that's it. All right, so my goal within this video is to be more comfortable with sketching a graph, finding that center, and then finding the value of a squared and plugging it into b squared. And that will give me all of the components of my function. So with that being said, let's jump straight into this first example. I am given these 2 foci points, 3, -8, 3, 4, and then they tell me that my major axis length is 18. So the first thing really that I'm thinking through is I have this equation, x minus h squared over a squared plus y minus k squared over b squared equals 1. Now remember, I'm not too sure of this just yet, honestly, because we know that a squared is always going to represent that bigger denominator. So those two may flip just depending on what everything up here is. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start our problem, and then we will know where we need to start plugging in a and b. So the first thing I want to do is I want to sketch a graph. So draw this nice little graph here. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No rhyme or reason to my counting. So now I'm going to plot these points. So at 3, -8, I'm going to have a foci point about right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then at 3, 4, I'll have my other foci point. Once I have those two things, I can draw in my major axes. And I just know that that major axis length is, 18. Is 18. And that's going to help me. That really has nothing to do with my foci at this point. But I can start filling in part of my formula. And the reason is my foci points. Part of your center will always be whatever value is not changing within the foci. So since the x value is not changing, that's going to be part of my center. So since it's a +3, that means in my equation I have x minus 3 squared plus y, and I don't know what the value of y is yet. I've got to go and find that. Well, for me, the easiest way to find that is to count the distance between my foci. Well, I know that this is a distance of 4, and this is a distance of 8. And the only reason I kind of do it like that is because these are those distances right here. Agreed? So that total distance is going to be a total distance of 12, 4 plus 8. Well, if I divide 12 by 2, that gives me 6. 6 represents the middle of this distance from my foci points. So if I start at this guy, at this foci point, and I go down 6 points, that's going to land me on the y value of where my center is. Because your center is directly in the middle of those foci points. So what I've done is I simply found the middle of those foci points. That was at 6 units away from here, or 6 units away from here, which is at -2. So in my equation, I can write y plus 2. So again, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know why that just did that. But the distance from here to here is 6, and here to here is 6. And so either way you want to count it, that gives me that. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because step 3 tells me to find a squared. Well, remember, with my major axes, your major axes is always, when I'm finding the length of that, the length of my major axes, and I'll say MA equals 2 times the value of A. Well, if 2 times the value of A in this particular problem equals 18, what is the value of A? Well, in that case, divided both sides by 2, and A equals 9. So, I know that A squared, which is one of the denominators, is going to be 81. Now I need to figure out, where does 81 go? Well, is this ellipse vertical or is it horizontal? Well, since my major axis is running vertically, that means that this ellipse is vertical. Therefore, 81, my greater denominator, will be in the underneath the y value. So that's pretty simple. I hope that you feel comfortable with that, but we're not quite done yet, because now I need to find the value of b squared. And the way that we do that is, I know that, how do we find our foci? Well, we find our foci by taking, and I'll write that over here, my foci is found by taking the square root of a squared minus b squared. And so if that's the case, my foci, which if you've seen my other videos I call f, equals the square root of, what's a squared? 81 minus b squared. And how do I find this distance right here? Well, remember, I plot my foci by moving a distance of f from the center. Well, what's the distance from the center to my foci? It's 6. So with that in mind, I just plug in that distance from my center to a foci into this equation, and I'm solving for b squared so that I can plug that in right here. So I'm going to square both sides. That gives me 36 equals 81 minus b squared. And then subtract, we'll do this. I'm going to subtract or add b squared to both sides. That way I have b squared plus 36 equals 81. Now I'm going to subtract 36 from both sides. That gives me b squared equals, and that'll be 45. And I can just plug in 45 right there, giving me my equation for my ellipse. So I know that finding the center and finding that a squared term and b squared, steps 2, 3, and 4, can be a little bit difficult. But if you slow down and really follow those 4 steps, I think it can make a big difference. Let's try one more. Let's see if we feel a little bit better with them. I'm given a foci of 6, -1, and 16, -1. I have a major axis length of 16. So I'm going to sketch a graph. I'm going to draw this one a little bit differently, because my x values are going to go from 6 to 16. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't need to go any higher or lower than -1, so I'm going to stop it there. And I'm going to plot my foci. So I have a foci at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 -1. And then I have a foci at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 6, oops, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, -1. And I have a length of a major axis of 16. And I don't know why I drew it like that. I'm getting kind of crazy. So this length here is 16. So I want to fill in my x minus h. Actually, let's do it this way. I'm filling in x minus or plus something squared plus y something squared equals 1. And I don't know where what a squared and b squared are. So very similarly, whatever is not changing within my foci is one of the values of my center. Since y is not changing, I have the y portion of my center. So now all I need to find is the x portion. Well, how do I do that? Well, in this particular case, all I need to do is find that distance from here to here. Well, I know that this point is at 6. This one's at 16. What's the distance between them? This whole distance is 10. So if I take 10, I divide that by 2. That gives me 5. That means that my center will be either 5 right that way or 5 left this way. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put it on my major axes, and that is my center for my ellipse. And where does that occur? Well, 6 plus 5, that's at 11. So my center is at 11, -1. Now that I have these, I can find my a squared and my b squared terms. Remember, the length of your major axes is always found by doing 2 times a. Well, if 2a equals 16, I can divide 16 by 2, and that gives me a equals 8. Now, what does a squared equal? Well, a squared equals 64. Where do I plug this in my equation? Well, I have a vertical ellipse because my major axis is running, my major axis is running horizontally. So I have a horizontal ellipse. So I'm placing 64 underneath my x value. Now I want to find my b squared term. Well, remember the distance, we find that by taking my foci. The distance of the foci is found by doing a squared plus b squared, not plus, minus b squared. And this value of f gives me the distance from my center to my foci, which, what is that distance? And I don't want people to be confused thinking that we're at 10, because this point is definitely 11 and -1. What's the distance from my center to my foci? That's a distance of 5. So I'm going to solve for b squared. Oops. And we can plug in our a squared term here. We know a squared is 64. So I'm going to square both sides. That gives me 25 equals 64 minus b squared. Do some math magic. Solve for b squared. We get b squared equals, and what is that? 59, 49, 39. And there we go. So b squared equals 39. So I hope this video has made you feel a little bit better in regards to finding the equation of an ellipse from the foci and the major axes length. I know that it's not the easiest thing in the world, but I hope this video made it a little bit easier for you to understand. So be sure to check out the other videos that we have listed for graphing and circles, and eventually we'll have more of hyperbolas and parabola. But thanks for checking out this video. I'll see you next time.